Welcome to Master B2B, the world's first and only unwebinar series. We're taking on the key issues in e-commerce for manufacturers and distributors. My name is Brian Beck. I am thrilled to be joined again today by Andy Hoare. And for those of you who don't know Andy, he's a 20-year veteran of the e-commerce field, one of the premier thinkers globally about this topic of digital transformation. 7 years running B2B e-commerce at Forrester Research. He's the CEO of Paradigm B2B and my partner in this thought leadership series we call Master B2B. Andy, welcome.
Yeah, great to be here. End of the year. This is the last one we're doing this year, and then we're going to refresh and we're going to have a whole series of these in 2022. So stay tuned on that. Great to be joined again today by Brian Beck. For those of you who don't know Brian, he's an author, a consultant, a former practitioner, but I guess if always once a practitioner, probably always a practitioner. So Brian's been in and around the e-commerce space for 20 years and really focused on B2B in the last several. So great to be here again, Brian.
Yes, you said it, Andy. Once a practitioner, always. It gets into your DNA and never leaves. So great to be joined today by a lot of great folks we have joining. But, to set the stage a little bit, Andy, this is a debate. Think about this like a sports talk show where we're taking these issues and we're really debating them because these are debatable issues. What is the right path? And today we're going to talk about channel conflict. Is the fear of channel conflict greater than the reality? Is the perception of it, preventing action? And, should you engage in direct e-commerce, and will that spell the end of your traditional channel relationships? Or not, or are these even mutually exclusive paths? So we're gonna settle this debate today, and we've got just so many folks, joining this. I was looking at the list ahead of time, Andy. You and I were talking a bit about it. Who do you see joining today?
Yeah, we've got once again a who's who. Yep. We got folks from Airgas. We got people from Avnet. Google is here. Sean Ferran, our friend from Grainger and former panelist. Kelly Bennett from Henkel is here.
Here.
Rexel, Stanley Black & Decker. Really, we're starting to see a trend here. A lot of B2B folks are joining us for these because, this issue in particular is a perennial issue. I was using the term endemic to play on the times. But yeah, this is an issue that's never going to go away. It has to be carefully managed. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, no doubt. And in a lot of ways, the folks that are joining us in this too, Andy, are becoming a community of folks who are sharing ideas. And we're real excited about that, folks. So as as we want you to interact with this session. So in the right-hand side here, there's the Q&A box. You heard it in the beginning. Put your questions in there. We're going to try to get to as many of them as we can. And we had some submitted in advance. So make sure you put your questions in there and so we can bring them into the conversation. And at the end of each of our 3 rounds, you're going to have a chance to vote on the winner of each debate. And we have 2 great teams today of some really senior and experienced people who have been around the block on this channel conflict issue. And we're going to debate the core of it. But we want to hear from you. And at the end of each of these 3 rounds, you'll vote. And at the end of the debate today, we're going to reveal who the winner of the debate is. So stick around for that. It's going to be exciting. So we had some really great quotes, Andy, about, when we posted this on LinkedIn last week, some really great input and conversation. Gosh, it took me about an hour and a half to read all the comments we got when we asked the question, does channel conflict or does selling directly spell the end of your traditional channel relationships? Should companies sell direct via e-commerce or not? Or are you better off enabling your channels? And I'll just frame it up a little bit here with some quotes I pulled out of our LinkedIn conversation, where we got, by the way, close to 8,000 shares, likes, and views and comments. Arguing that direct selling is destructive. We had a comment from James Asquith. He's with Parker Pipes, Flanges, and Fittings. He said, check this out, Andy, long established relationships have been destroyed. Wow, because it's easier for people to find the direct source of products. Selling via e-commerce is just the next step in this evolution. Okay, so he's going to say channel first, I think. In contrast, Colin the Crusher Cronin, Colin was a former contender on one of our on webinars. He's a director of e-commerce at Leica Biosystems. He says there's no argument at all. He says rather than worry about channel conflict, focus on meeting the customer where they want to purchase. No brainer. That's what he said. And just one more quote real quick here, Andy. Bill Carrier, who's with the University of Wisconsin's e-business consortium, he kind of took the middle ground, which is interesting. Distributors, customer contracts lock in a decent percentage of total sales for manufacturers who use distribution. So this debate is really about small volume transactional business. As long as manufacturers don't get stupid with pricing and protect their distributors' pricing model, everybody wins. So there you go, Andy. You got three perspectives we had about 100 plus comments on that post that kind of frame up the issue for us. But you're the data man, Andy. Take us through some data here. Show us, why don't you frame up the issue a little bit for us?
Well, like I said, this has been around for a while. We have some slides you want to show here. I think before you're tempted to think this is really just a brand manager or brand manufacturer issue, it really isn't. And you're going to find out when we do the debate that distributors have a strong opinion about this. They have channel conflict issues too around things like private label, et cetera. So we're going to get into that. But I did some research a couple of years ago when I was back at Forrester, and it was called a brand new day, play on terms. And what you see on the screen is actually one of the graphics that really, I think, elucidated the point. And what you can see is it was actually controversial for some reason. There were many brand manufacturers who didn't feel like they should be in the center of their selling proposition. I used to say, look, the brand has to put itself now in the center of its own selling proposition. And what I often heard was, well, we're brand manufacturers. We make stuff. The channel sells it for us and services it for us. And I think that's a really archaic approach to this, which is the substance of today's debate. But what you see on the screen here is if you look at like a clock, if you see from like basically 1 to say 5 o'clock, the green part there, those are the traditional channels, offline channels. And then around the outside, you can see the types of customers that the brand manufacturer might want to reach. So for example, you got a brand selling through distributors to reach a B2B traditionalist. Somebody who wants to go to a will call window, or wants to talk to a sales rep on the phone, or wants to fax in an order. That's sort of the old legacy way of doing things. And then there's the digital first B2B traditionalist approach, which is basically those B2B traditionalists who want to, instead of going to a will call window, they want to actually order from, say, Grainger or McMaster-Carr or something like that via their website, via McMaster-Carr or Grainger's website. So that's why it says .com. We're going to skip over to the next one, brand invested buyers, because I'm going to talk about that one in just a moment. But the ones at the top from say like 9 to 1 o'clock, you see consumerized digital first B2B buyers. The idea here is these are kind of the vertical or horizontal marketplaces that have started to emerge, which is, by the way, another channel. And we're going to talk about this. And at the top, because it's its own channel, is Amazon. And it really is 2 channels, at least, probably more. You got the Amazon business channel, which is really focused on business users. And then you got Amazon itself. And people often, forget that Amazon.com sells a lot of B2B, not just Amazon business. So this kind of lays out many of the options that a brand manufacturer has. Now, if you go to the next slide, you'll see that I want to isolate for just that one, the brand invested buyer. Well, in the very same research that I published this in, discovered something quite interesting, which is that we did this 2 years in a row, that 44%, the number was almost identical both years, which is uncanny, but 44% of B2B buyers told us across all industries that all things being equal, they would prefer to buy directly from a brand manufacturer over a channel partner, 44%. And I thought, hey, just for fun, and I kind of wanted to see what was going to happen here, I threw in another question in the survey. And I said, I wonder what percentage of people will be willing to pay for the privilege of buying directly from a brand manufacturer, even if it meant spending more money. I thought this number is going to be really low, like in the single digits. The number was half of that. It was like 21, 22% of all B2B buyers told us 2 years running that all things being equal, they would prefer to buy directly from a brand manufacturer and were willing to pay a premium to do so. Now, a lot of people watching this right now are thinking, that's nuts. Nobody really believes that. You might want to check your own research, because I call it the halo effect. If you're a B2B buyer, you don't really care about pennies or nickels or whatever as much as, say, maybe a consumer does when it's their own money. But when you're spending somebody else's money and you might get fired if you buy the wrong product, you're really not going to care about a couple of pennies here and there. So there are, in fact, B2B buyers out there who do want to buy directly from brand manufacturers. And those who don't want to sell direct to them, and this is the team I'm adopting, are leaving money on the table. That all said, on the next slide, it is still the case that 75%, according to my former colleague Jay McBain at Forrester, who's done a lot of research on channels, 75% of all sales across all commerce are indirect or through a channel of some sort. It's still only about 25% are sold direct. Now, that number is probably going to change with the pandemic, so we'll have to see some updated numbers here. So it's still the case the channel is overwhelming where people make their purchases. But that was before the pandemic. That was before 2020. So things, and it's a great setup for this conversation, may have changed fairly dramatically in the last year. So once the numbers come in and after our debate, we'll see.
Yeah. All right, Andy. Well, that's, I say, show me the money, and then 75% of the money is with the channel, and I'm adopting that team. So all that said, let's get into introducing our contenders today. These aren't panelists, folks. These are contenders. They have the gloves on and the weapons out. Okay. My team. I'm representing Team Channel First, and I have a team that should make your team quake there, Andy. And our first contender is Valinda the Clubber Cox. No, she's got weapons. She brought weapons. So,
very glad to be here, Brian.
Thank you for being here, Valinda. We're psyched to have you. We like to say Valinda crushes complexity with clever and compelling arguments. Love that. Valinda's the SVP of eCommerce and the chief product owner at almost $10 billion global manufacturer, Konica Minolta. I've known Valinda for a few years. We've done some work together. Valinda, I'm so happy you're here. She says, as a leader in our industry, we must digitally enable our value-added channel partners as a first step to better serving our ultimate customer. Valinda, glad you're here. Our next contender is Matt, the Wild Man Wingham. Matt, you got to wear some face paint, man. Or some crazy pink hair or something. I don't know. But anyway, I love your nickname. The Wild Man Wingham. There is no debate for the Wild Man Wingham. He enables channels. He agrees that enabling channels is the clear path to enabling digital commerce success. He is the director of e-commerce at Fortune, I think 14 or something, right, Matt? Manufacturer and distributor, Cardinal Health. Matt knows that working with traditional channel partners is the key to winning. He says channel partners have deep and enduring relationships with customers, some of which they've served loyally for decades. No one in the ecosystem wants to jeopardize that. Matt, welcome.
Brian, thanks for having me. I got to tell you, I'm feeling extra wild today. So Valinda and I, we're ready to rumble.
All right, let's go, guys. Andy, introduce your team.
Yeah, I've known Matt for years, and the wild man thing kind of scares me a little bit because it's so inconsistent with his character. So I don't know what he's going to do. So I better watch my back.
Right.
Okay, so on Team Sell Direct, the winning team as always, we've got Sadaf the Killer Kazmi. So Sadaf, I've known her for many years. She was at Staples running the B2B commerce group there. She was at Sapient prior to that back in the day. Most recently, she was at Thomson Reuters, the news and information company. And she's actually transitioning to a new role in the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned on that one. But Sadaf believes that channel conflict concerns are simply an excuse for inaction. And her quote is, B2B companies that are not selling directly via direct channels, digital channels, are rapidly rendering themselves irrelevant. I couldn't have said it better myself, but Sadaf, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
And by the way, the killer thing is interesting because didn't you tell me beforehand that you don't have a gadget, you just kill silently because you want to leave any evidence, right?
That's right. That's the best way to do it. I am a lawyer by training, so always got to think about the evidence component.
Uh-oh.
And then last but not least, we've got Andy, the pulverizer people. So the pulverizer knows how to pummel poor principals, say that 10 times fast, as the VP and product of go-to-market strategies for Salesforce Commerce Cloud. He's got a long career in the digital field, including stints at Acuity Group and Accenture. Andy has seen firsthand the value of selling direct in B2B. And here's his quote: direct e-commerce is a must for B2B firms and can complement channel enablement efforts. Channel conflict can be overcome. So Andy, welcome.
We're here ready to bring it. I think Sadaf and I have the wind at our backs, and we've got the power of the internet behind us. We're ready.
All right.
Excellent.
Wow. All right. So that was a great setup, guys. I think it's about that time. So let's rumble. There it is. All right, Andy, first one's yours.
All right,
Yeah.
we're jumping right in. So we're going to go right to the heart of the issue. We've got 10 minutes. We're going to expand this section a little bit because there's a bunch that we want to cover here. So here's the question. Should manufacturers sell direct and effectively not discriminate against channels? And what we mean by that is selling direct as important as it is, selling in other channels? We're going to go right to team sell direct and give them a chance to win this one with a knockout immediately. Let's go first to Andy Peebler. I suspect your answer to this is going to be the right answer, which is yes.
Absolutely. This is a pretty emphatic yes. I think, first of all, it's an easy yes too. I don't think it takes as much thought as required, because it doesn't mean selling every single product you have direct. It just means having that connection out there and having a meaningful connection, because I think most manufacturers have realized that you're putting that end customer experience pretty significantly at risk without a direct connection to your actual users. At a minimum, that means things like parts, new and innovative uses, things like technology support for your products. How in the heck are you going to grow and drive demand, whether it's from channel or direct, unless you have that direct connectivity? And quite frankly, if you're like a lot of our customers, your channel will thank you for it. Sonos, for example, has a really robust direct selling ecosystem, and it drives growth for their channel just as much. In fact, they're able to spurn channel purchase from their direct connection better than they can, because they can highlight unique and innovative capabilities and drive more revenue everywhere. We're just in such a much more connected world. And given distribution nuances, et cetera, this direct channel is a necessary channel for all manufacturers today.
Well said. Sadaf, you want to add something here?
Yeah, I completely agree with what Andy said. I'll add just a couple things here, which is that, the reality is that some customers don't always want to deal with salespeople. It actually introduces friction at times. So I think enabling that direct channel is incredibly critical. So I see that as a no-brainer. And then to add to what Andy said as well, trust is the name of the game. You want to make sure that your customers trust you. And being out there and selling direct actually enables you to engender that trust, and being consistent across channels further reinforces that.
Well, I think the team has actually made a really good case, but we'll give Team Channel first a chance to respond, even if ineffectively, Brian. I'm having fun here. So, Belinda,
yeah.
what's your thought on this?
First thing I heard from Andy was some portfolio being sold online. So obviously already he's into a bit of denial that it's so important, that he's already recognized both sides of the story being of value. I would say absolutely no debate for channel partners' importance. There are markets that you have indirect, unrepresented in, and there's an opportunity for us to scale across all those channels. So if we were just to use our direct organization only, we wouldn't have the ability to reach all the market that the universe of the web and digital e-commerce is creating for us.
I'm seeing a notion emerge here, which we're going to, I think, talk about a little bit later, about maybe one doesn't capture everything. So Matt, what are your thoughts on this?
Totally agree with Belinda on this one, Andy. I think we need to think about the value that channel partners offer for our customers in the customer journey. So think about Cardinal Health and what we do from a distribution standpoint. We have thousands of salespeople, feet on the street, that are establishing relationships with our customers. And those relationships are really challenging to replicate online. So I think from a relationship standpoint, that helps us grow and reinforces the importance of the channel. I think the other thing to keep in mind too is from a manufacturing standpoint, I think when they start thinking about selling direct, there's a pretty significant cost associated with doing so. And I think those costs can be underestimated and need to be evaluated and understood if a manufacturer wants to sell direct.
Well, amazingly, this didn't come up in any of the answers, but I know this is a massive issue. So we're going to address it head on here around pricing, and about pricing direct versus in the channel. And so there's always this long question about minimally advertised pricing, MSRP. What do you do in the channel around pricing? If you do sell direct, do you price it the same? Do you price it differently? So let's go right to Belinda on this one. Let's hear your thoughts on, should you discount through the channel, for example?
Well, I think pricing is really a tough one because you have to have some equity in the market, but the market drives the price, not the channels, right? So what if the customers are wanting to pay is the position that you have to get to. You have to be conscientious of that. And I think you have to have a lot of analysis and assessment, but we're not setting the price, the customer is. So what they'll pay to buy the products that we're delivering through e-commerce. And I think it's important that you have a consideration to all channels in making those pricing decisions.
Well, Matt, you're both a manufacturer and a distributor, so you can have conflict with yourself. And I'd imagine on the pricing issue, it must be really interesting.
It definitely is. I go back to flexibility. I think flexibility is key and important. And I think, putting my distributor hat on, because we have the relationship with the customer and understand what they need, not only from a product and but also from a services standpoint, looking at flexibility and being able to establish the price that the customer is willing to pay because we have that relationship and all the information from a customer standpoint. I think that's key. And that's why the channel, in this case, distributors, should play a definite role in helping set the price for what customers should pay.
Well, Sadaf, you've been a little bit of both too. You've been both a brand manufacturer, you've been a distributor, and as a distributor, you've probably done private label, so you've had to deal with this pricing issue too. What are your thoughts on pricing in general here in the channel, and maybe weigh in on MAP if you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually believe that the brand should maintain control. And pricing is a way to do that, right? So I'm a believer in MAP. I'm a believer in maintaining control over the pricing across all of your channels. If you are a branded manufacturer. I think the other way to look at this is in my last job at Thomson Reuters, as we were migrating all of our sales really on the smaller end of our market to our commerce channel, actually unifying that pricing strategy was incredibly critical and was the source of real limitations around selling online. So it's critical that you have an omnichannel pricing policy that is standardized. Going back to the component on trust, you need your customers to trust you, and it needs to be a great experience for your customers, and having standardized pricing across your channels actually helps you to do that. So I think we're kind of missing the customer experience and customer trust component, which is really going to help you as a business to sell to a particular contingent. And that's incredibly critical. I'll also say that you'll need to understand cannibalization and implications, and you'll obviously do that. Go in eyes wide open. But that criticality around uniform pricing, I think, is really paramount.
Yeah, very quickly, Andy Peeble, do you want to weigh in on this pricing issue?
I totally agree with Sadaf. In today's day and age, our B2B buyers, frankly, have access to more and different pricing for the same products than they ever have. So if they see inconsistency across your own channel partners, that creates confusion. It slows the sale. I think, as it relates to the topic of selling direct, quite frankly, you don't have to compete on price at all with your partners, nor would I suggest you do it. I think the selling direct is such a powerful motion, such an important motion, that does provide an opportunity for manufacturers to maintain, those higher prices in the direct channel, because that's not why customers turn there.
Yeah, I personally agree. We'll talk about this a bit more later, but I completely agree with that notion that brands have to control their own pricing. Okay, so very quickly, I don't know how much time we have left, Brian, but we're down to minute and 30. So we're gonna do this one quickly. I mentioned in the wheel diagram I showed earlier that one of those areas that people are now accessing brands and even commencing commerce is in first and third party marketplaces, vertical and horizontal marketplaces. So let's talk quickly about that, which I actually don't see as a channel. I see it more as an extension of selling direct. And for purposes of discussion, we're going to kind of approach it that way. So Andy Peeble, let's go to you first on this one. Should company brands be selling through first and third party vertical and horizontal marketplaces?
Yes, emphatically, yes. I think, in today's world, you're going to find that you need to have different options for distribution strategies. And that's going to very likely lead you to certain markets where you may need to grow a first party marketplace just to be able to cover the needs of your customers and cover for natural distribution and supply shortages. In other markets, that answer might be a third party marketplace, because that's where kind of the nexus of distribution and other providers are. But these marketplace motions are here to stay. And all manufacturers need to really be thinking about how to use them strategically.
Yeah, so in the interest of time, which Brian's reminding me of, we're going to actually go quickly to team channel first, and want to hear from Matt and Belinda quickly. So I'm going to suggest I'm going to suspect that you think that these marketplaces maybe aren't such a great idea if they compete with or cannibalize traditional channels.
Well, I
Definitely.
think,
And
go ahead,
Belinda.
please. No, please go ahead, Matt.
I'm just going to weigh in quickly that, especially in the healthcare industry, which is where I'm living, the concern I have is around service level agreements by selling through marketplaces. So our customers, especially in the healthcare industry, really value service, and when something goes wrong, we have to step in and service the customer. And so you're going to get that same level of service through a marketplace. That's a concern I have with the marketplace model. Sorry, Belinda, go ahead.
No, and I had one additional concern to that very good point you made, which is around the data capture. I think that when you are in the marketplaces and they're not your own, you lose the ability to understand the behavior of the customer and what's happening. So that's really critical also for that intimacy that you want to gain. And so I think that detached third party doesn't give you that element. They're capturing all that information. They have all that value going to them. It's not a great position.
All right, Andy, we're up on time. We're going to get more into marketplaces on our next round as well, guys. So thank you for your comments. Let's go to the poll question. Go ahead and pop that up. Here we go. As a brand manufacturer, should you sell direct if you're also selling through the channel? I have a few thoughts on this one, Andy.
No way.
If you wouldn't mind, I'll start. I loved Belinda's quote. Market drives the price, not the channel. We have got to give the channel the ability to be flexible. And Matt said it too. They've got to be flexible with things like pricing. Listen, I understand consistency, right? I understand that you want to develop trust. Killer, I hear you. You want to develop trust and maintain trust with the channel. But what about the trust with your resellers? You're going to violate the trust with your reseller if you go direct. So, ultimately, my opinion, look, channels and distributors, they have channel options. I mean, Matt will talk to this. Cardinal has their own private label branded products. They're doing this for a reason. They have options. They have supplier options. The channel understands the end customer, the ultimate customer, I would argue better than the manufacturer does. And that value needs to be acknowledged. Why, Andy, do they still have 75% of the volume as more and more manufacturers are selling direct? So I think, look, at the end of the day, we'll come to some kumbayas here in a minute, but I think the channel is the place to start, particularly if you're new to digital commerce. You have to enable your channel first. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think, like I said, that the map pricing is critical here. It doesn't work in all cases, but you can't just allow. I mean, I'm a capitalist. I believe in free markets, but you can't just allow the price to run free and have the ultimate inflexibility. The brands need to maintain some control, some semblance of control over their pricing, or you're going to see diverted inventory. You're going to see prices that undermine the dealers' prices. If they just let it run rampant and there's no control over the pricing, you're going to find dealers reacting negatively to that, ironically enough.
That's interesting. All right, we're out of time on our poll question here. Thank you for your votes. We'll show them at the end. Let's bring our panelists back for round two. I got to get my timing down on that. All right, guys, thank you so much. So round two is mine. Andy, if you wouldn't mind keeping time for us, we are going to talk more about third-party marketplaces, and specifically, we're going to talk about Amazon and should branded manufacturers sell their products on Amazon and similar third-party marketplaces. So the first question is that, should they sell? And I'm going to go to team sell direct first. I'm imagining Mr. Peebler, Mr. Pulverizer, you're going to go first, and you're probably going to say yes, but go ahead.
Well, of course, I'd say if you are alive and selling products in the United States, being on Amazon is kind of a must. You're nuts to not have some representation for your branded manufacturer there. And that's increasingly true for some other markets as well. It's just becoming a single source of truth in so many areas that if you're not there, somebody else will be for you. Okay.
And Sadaf, I think you had some nuance to add on to that.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you. And there are different ways to slice this. You could be selective about the assortment and how you manage that, the assortment and what you sell on Amazon. But I'm with Andy. I mean, you got to be there. The majority of people, when they're shopping, go to Amazon before they go to Google. And there's, some conflicting research on this. Maybe it's, Amazon first, sometimes it's Google first, but they're kind of at parity. And so it's simply something that you can't ignore.
We got a question in here from one of our attendees. Does the product type impact recommendations? And, Sadaf, I don't know if you have anything you want to speak to on that, but, as you think about Amazon as a channel, I think what you're saying is the product type could vary based on what you bring into that. That channel is not necessarily all or nothing, is what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's not. It's not going to be a one size fits all. But if you're selling to a customer, a smaller customer, I mean, those people will be shopping on Amazon, or when they look online, Amazon will come up in search results. And so it's something that you simply can't ignore. So it needs to fundamentally be part of your strategy. And in terms of your assortment, your pricing, et cetera, you need to be smart about it. And so there is some nuance there, but you can't just ignore it and not be part of the game, so to speak.
Well, it's increasingly true across tons of B2B product categories and technical and complex categories as well. And again, if you're not out there with accuracy, there's a great chance somebody else is out there without the accuracy, and it's going to cause problems.
All right. Well, we got to go to the other team here. Belinda, I think you disagree with this. You don't control the customer, right? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you don't have the control of the customer and you don't have the data, which I mentioned earlier. I do believe that it's okay to do experiments because they're the animal in the room that's the size of an elephant. You can't ignore it. They're sitting there and you can get some insights, but it's not the solution for every market. You don't have control of your customer and or the information that's being obtained, and you're sort of at the mercy of them. But participating with Amazon is important because otherwise your brand is completely at the will of whoever's been able to publish on Amazon. So, for example, when I first took a look at what Konica Minolta was doing globally on Amazon, there was no brand consistency. It was very disappointing to see what was out there. So I think that's also important.
I would agree. And Matt, what about you? What's your perspective?
Yeah, I would just have some major concerns about high preference items, and especially in the healthcare industry. Again, Brian, God forbid, you've got to go in and get a hip replaced or a knee replaced, and you're going into a surgery center. You want the surgery center to be buying your essential hip and knee replacement materials from Amazon or another marketplace? I'm guessing the answer is no. So yeah, I mean, high preference items, especially in the healthcare industry, I'd have major concern with selling those to marketplaces. Maybe commodity items, sure, but would have some concerns around those high preference items.
Yeah. Last time I got my hip replaced, I would say it probably didn't come from Amazon. What do you do about, what you don't control on Amazon? So let's say, you are selling, what are some of the considerations there around the things you don't control, like the customer relationship, like competitors, et cetera? I'll go to Team Channel first on this. Matt, why don't you layer on to what you just said on this?
Yeah, I think what's concerning is even for commoditized type products, right? I mean, we know Amazon's going to take those products in many cases, slap an Amazon Basics label on it or create their own product and start selling those. And so that can erode your share there. So, I think if you are going to go that route, you really have to take control, to Belinda's point, and really have to make sure you know what Amazon's doing and working to kind of defend or protect those products that you are selling, making sure that they're not going to take them and create their own version of them.
Okay. And Belinda, you have anything to add to that?
No, I totally agree with him. I think that Matt's got some really good points. Product is important for, some critical needs. I wouldn't want to go shop on Amazon for it. And I believe that, there are markets where Amazon's not well represented around the world. There are some areas, I know the United States, it's a dominant area, but some of the areas, there's other alternatives, let's say, and especially in our Eastern Asia Pacific area. So you have to look at what's the right fit, who's going to give you the market exposure, be confident and aware of what you're doing, get control of your brand. But I don't say it's the end all answer for the way you should do your marketing strategy. And that's it. I mean, your e-commerce strategy, and that's all you should do.
All right. Well,
no way.
Good points there. Thank you, Belinda. Sadaf, what do you do about this data that you don't control? You don't have ownership of the customer. I mean, you and Andy, the pulverizer over there, are arguing you should sell here. So you're not in control of this. What do you do about that?
I mean, you might not have all of the data through Amazon, but I think the upside is stronger than some of the limitations. The reality is, as we talked about before, your customer is there. I think you have to be smart about the assortment and what you sell online. As far as competitors being there, your competitors are on the internet. I think it's us kidding ourselves that, people aren't going to have access to your competitors or be comparing prices or products. I mean, that's just not the reality of today. So I think this is really about being smart about how you sell on Amazon, making sure that you're thoughtful about the assortment, sell the things that are proprietary brands that, are things that are hard to, genericize. These are not necessarily mass market commodity products. This is what we did at Staples. We sold our own brand through Amazon a number of years ago. We do something similar. We did something similar at Thomson Reuters. That's not stuff that you can mimic, so to speak. So I think it's about being smart, using that channel as a way to magnify your sales, as opposed to seeing the limitations around it.
And Pradap, you're an advocate for MAP. Can you enforce MAP on Amazon?
That is a good question.
Sorry, I threw it at you.
Yeah. So that can be tricky, but I think, the opportunity here is really to sort of limit and be aggressive as you can, and work to collaborate with Amazon to ensure that you do the best you can around pricing.
Okay.
And that's going to vary.
All right. 50 seconds left. Andy, do you have anything you want to add to that one?
I think Sadaf really lived up to her nickname as Killer there and just nailed it. So no, I'm comfortable resting on that compelling argument.
Okay, great. Anything else, Matt, Wildman, or Clubber, do you guys want to add to that as a counterpoint to what was just stated?
I would just say that on the large accounts, the enterprise space, they're really not going to look at just Amazon and buy. They want more to that. And in those RFP processes, they're looking for businesses outside of Amazon to deliver everything. And that needs to be negotiated. So I would say that there is a big market opportunity at the high end of the business outside of Amazon to have the direct relationship with your channels.
Got it. Okay. Well, I think we're just up on time. So guys, thank you for that good back and forth. Let's go ahead and bring up the poll question. And here it is. If you are a brand manufacturer, should you sell via Amazon? So audience, weigh in. Andy, what'd you think of that one?
I think every discussion about Amazon is a great discussion, and it has a lot to do with where you sit or you stand or however that phrase goes. I mean, I think, look, there's no simple answer to the Amazon question, except this one. You can't avoid it. Mm-hmm. And so, like Team Direct said, you got to be where your customers are. There's just no question about it. You just got to be smart about it. I mean, I was looking back through some of the LinkedIn comments, and there's one here from Min Yang, who works at Alibaba, an Amazon competitor. And she said, savvy brands even create different sets of products for Amazon versus Walmart. So Sadaf mentioned this too. I think the smart thing to do is not to sell the same thing everywhere, because you're inherently commoditizing your products. That said, you got to be pretty savvy, and as Min said, you can't just sell everything the same everywhere.
So I think, Andy, I have a nuanced view on this, and I think the consensus is that, I think from our panelists, that Amazon you need to be there, but it's really in how you're there, right? A lot of companies have sold historically as a vendor or a wholesaler to Amazon, in which case you completely lose control of your price. My experience has been through my company in SIBA is that does Amazon work with B2B brands, is that, Amazon Vendor Central won't honor MAP policies, which is why I set off that question. I was curious what she found. And that's what we see. This whole notion of a third-party selling approach, or 3P, or Seller Central, is one that I see a lot of manufacturers taking. And the reason, Andy, is that they can control the inventory, the price, the assortment, the content, and you can stay in front of your customer, and you don't have to necessarily sell your whole product line there. So I argue that, for manufacturers, this is a bit of a change of channels, right? It's a little bit of, changing the distribution model. Amazon Business is becoming one of the largest distributors in the world, but you got to be smart about your product selection. And I think distributors should be there too, to sell private label. That's my opinion, so they can learn the bar that Amazon is setting for your buyers. All right, we're out of time. I'll shut up.
Wait a minute, you just made my point, didn't you?
No, kind of. No.
Welcome to Team Sell Direct, Brian.
No. I'm not saying sell to Amazon. I'm saying sell through Amazon, which is different. Channel first. Amazon is a channel. There you go, Andy. I just reversed it on you. We got to go to round 3. Here we go. All right. Round 3.
I think that's but we'll let that one go for a while.
Yeah, all right. We'll come back at the end.
Topic 3 is a bit of a twist on channel conflict. It's internal channel conflict, which is often kind of left out of the equation when we talk about channel conflict. So we get 8 minutes. We're going to go right to it. And this is a simple question. should you prioritize website investments over investments in physical salespeople? Let's go to Team Sell Direct first. Andy Peeble, let's go to you on this one. What's your thought on it?
Yeah, I think, without a doubt, website gives you a lot more flexibility. And quite frankly, I think you can tune investments in your site and your digital experiences so that it really streamlines the channel journey as well, including distributors, say maybe even into the motion of the website for lead flows and other kinds of transitions. I think the content that you're investing in to fund the website should also be supportive of your salespeople, for example. So those digital investments into your website can power the rest of your ecosystem as well and help you streamline it, which will give you a lot of benefits going forward.
Well, hopefully we'll move beyond this discussion, because right now there's still sort of a zero-sum game between website and physical. That's why we're asking this question. But over time, these have to harmonize. The best companies are finding ways to make this work together. But Sadaf, what's been your experience here? I mean, when you're asked to take $1 out of one pocket and put it into another, what decision do you make here about the website versus your physical salespeople?
I mean, I'm team website all day long. And I think the critical thing here is it's really efficient, right? So you think about, your customers going to your website, whether they ultimately transact online or not, you get a lot of value out of having a really strong online presence for all customers across all stages of the journey. So I think this is incredibly critical. It's 2021, almost 2022. This is, really a baseline thing that you have to have and make sure that online presence is really robust and really critical.
Well, we do a lot of research here too, Andy, and people tell us all the time, even if they don't make that final purchase from the website, they do a lot of research and get their confidence up to make that purchase on the website, which just supports everything that Sadaf just said.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I'm going to make this a little easier for you, Matt, as we transition to Team Channel First. I'm sure you're going to tell me that, like Brian's knee replacement surgery or an IV bag, you want to talk to a person. You can't just trust that to the website, right?
Absolutely, absolutely true. Right. So when you are a large distributor like we are, right, and you play that role within the channel, you have a large sales staff. Those sales folks have insights that in many ways are really challenging to replicate online. So that large sales staff who are feet on the street, they're working with customers every day, they're building those relationships. That requires additional investment year over year to make sure that we're continuing to establish those relationships and looking at how we can use those to grow the business and provide the best customer experience possible. So definitely investment in people. It's the greatest asset that we have as a distributor working with our customers.
And I will concede that they do help press and drive a lot of traffic to the website. But Valinda, I don't think that's going to be your argument, right?
Well, I'm going to take a hybrid approach to this topic, because I think it's important to have both. And the digital infrastructure is actually enabling the direct sales organization to be successful. It's creating business for them. It's finding incremental leads for them. So it's a combination of that technology infrastructure investment, but you're actually getting the results also through your channel. So I agree with Matt when he says people want to talk to somebody who's a specialist around certain topics, and you should have a hybrid approach to get that live sales agent there through the digital investment and the infrastructure that you've created.
Well, let's take this a bit further and let's ask a really difficult question. We can all be for supporting channels, et cetera, but now I'm going to ask you, are you going to put your budget into this? And specifically, should you take the lead? Should the e-commerce people, channel supporting, direct, doesn't matter, but should folks like you who are running e-commerce for your respective organizations, should you take the lead on digital enablement of both your internal and external channels? In other words, should you pay for the salespeople's digital enablement, and should you pay for your channel partners' digital enablement, especially if it falls short? So let's go to Team Channel First and toss you a softball here. I guess the answer is yes, right? Valinda, let's let you go first on this one.
Absolutely, yes. I think that investment is a return that you get from both business growth in your direct and indirect channels. Absolutely, yes.
Well, I wonder if you said that was your personal money, but anyway, a separate note. Let's go to Matt for a follow-up on this one.
Of course, the question, Andy, I have is how much do we have to pay, right? But the answer is yes, right? Especially, I think when you're working with maybe smaller manufacturers that are less mature in this space, the goal is to provide the best customer experience possible, right? We want to make sure our customers, when they're coming online, can find product easily. You've got really strong product content. You've got service levels that you can commit to. I think the product content piece is a good example to use in which, yes, we should be helping our manufacturers understand what resonates well online with our customers. Here are style guides that we need you to adhere to help the customer be able to have a good experience, whether it's around images, marketing content, any sort of collateral that'll help sell the products. And it would be mutually beneficial, right, for the manufacturer and a distributor. So answer is yes, of course, Andy.
So I will actually agree with you slightly on this one. I think on the product, I think you're absolutely right. Enabling the channel for accuracy, et cetera, is really, really critical here when it comes to product data. But we're going to go to a final comment here from Team Sell Direct, and Sadaf, you in particular. I suspect you'll say, yes, I'm all for the channel, just not my money.
That's right. I mean, I think that it might be worth doing, right? Depending on your business, but not with the e-commerce dollars. The reality is, and as I said before, you need to have a strong online e-commerce transactional presence, and it might help your traditional channels, and I think that's great. But you can't make that investment in the channel at the expense of your e-commerce channel and your direct channel, because that is critical to your growth in the future. And will be critical to just, continue to do business in 2021 and beyond. That, I guess that was sort of a little bit of a mixed answer, but I think not at the expense of the site.
Yeah, so we have 1 minute left here. Somebody else wanted to we're going to freestyle here. Somebody want to jump in on this, and a point maybe you didn't make about the channels so far.
Well, Andy, in the beginning, you said 75% of the channel, the business is coming from channel other than direct, right? But if you don't have that digital infrastructure there, that entire equation cannot operate. So for me, it's a combination of making the investment in the digital infrastructure, and then it enables both channels' success, right? It's a no-brainer. Make the investment.
I think Matt's right, though. How much, right? I mean, how much are we going to spend on this? And I'm just curious, anybody here want to fess up? Do you ever go to your sales team or your channel partners and say, hey, I think you guys need to cough up some cash for this too, because you're going to benefit pretty directly? Anybody willing to admit that?
We did that at my last company, actually. We had, that sort of sales enablement component was funded by our sales commercial excellence team. And that was, squarely in their mandate. Didn't come out of my funding on the online side. I think that was the right decision. I'm not saying it was unimportant to enable the sales channel, but it wasn't a trade-off with the funding that I was responsible for driving the online evolution.
I think that's perfect.
We see that all the time among our customers too, actually. I would just say, here's an area where I do tend to agree with Belinda here, and that, one of the great artifacts of investing in a website is much better product content. And so those kinds of capabilities or artifacts will support your channel partners no matter what you do. And then investing in enable them needn't necessarily consume budget from your e-com direct dollars. I think there are other ways to handle that. And quite frankly, the alignment you get from across your own sales leaders at the company work better that way too.
All right, guys, we're out of time. We got to go to our poll question. Let's go ahead and bring that up. Thank you all. That was a good debate. Excellent argument. So here's the question. Should the e-commerce team fund the digital infrastructure for both salespeople and channel partners? Yes or no? So go ahead and answer that question. Andy, that was a really interesting debate. What'd you take away from that?
I can't wait to see the answer to this poll question.
Right. Exactly.
I think we probably addressed it a little bit there in our freestyle at the end. The reality is, and we've been arguing this for years, that we really should drop the E from in front of commerce. And if we're going to be intellectually honest and drop the E from in front of commerce, then we probably should be thinking about digital channels as an extension of e-commerce if we drop the E. So if you follow my logic on that, I think over time, like I said, it's a little bit sad there's still this conflict that exists between various channels, internal and external. Smart organizations, I'm a realist, I understand that, but smart organizations don't have that problem. At least they have the problem, but they found ways to mitigate it. The salespeople are on board with it. The channel partners are paying their fair share, that kind of thing. And that's what should be the goal here.
Yeah, we're really talking about internal channel conflict in a lot of ways, right? And so, look, I've got some case studies in my book that talk about, when CRM is tied together, so the physical sales team and how they interact and their digital tools are tied together with the digital commerce, e-commerce site, how powerful that can be, Andy. I mean, one case study I have in there is Illumina, and they're getting get this $1 million+ shopping carts on their e-commerce site. Well, that didn't just materialize out of thin air. That happened because the sales team was highly engaged with that customer, and that customer at the end of the day just happened to want to make the purchase through the e-commerce site. So it's this whole emergence of this, what McKinsey calls, and we've talked about this, the hybrid sales rep. Like 85% of B2B companies expect that that's the predominant role in their organization within 2 years. And these are digitally enabled sales folks that are working together with e-commerce. There's a reason they found that. It's because they do need to work together. And the channel in this case being the internal needs to be enabled. Okay.
One quick point here. Richard Caruso made this point in LinkedIn. He was saying that
Ricardo,
it's still the case that, sadly, e-commerce can be treated as a low value channel because people think it's just about shifting revenue versus creating incremental revenue. But we've had lots of people commenting about this. Matt Dole commented on this one from American Fire Glass, where he said, their D2C business drove their channel business, and their channel business drove their D2C business. So one and one can equal 3 here if it's done properly. And that's one of the reasons to get rid of the channel conflict.
Yeah, no, exactly. So, all right, we need to go to our closing statement. Let's go ahead and bring Andy back. Bring him back on the screen if we could. Mr. Andy, are you here? There you are.
There.
I'm here.
All right. So go ahead, sir. You have 2 minutes to make your closing argument.
Perfect. Great. And first of all, thank you everyone for having me. And thank you for the great panelists. It's been a pleasure to have this lively conversation. And I love the format. I think this format has given us a real ability to cut through the chaff and get right down to the core issues. And I bet you almost everybody listening to this conversation can relate to the dialogue we've just had. I mean, as a practitioner in B2B for way too long, like everybody's been having these dialogues for 10 or more years in their companies. And the really thing that gives me the most, I think, comfort in today's world is that by and large, most of the industry has gotten past the either or dialogue. And so this debate format does a great job crystallizing the reasons for each side. But the reality is that I think everybody has to be doing a little bit of all of the things that we talked about today. And there's just tons of evidence across the board to support that, not only on the B2B buyer side, that yes, B2B buyers across almost every industry want to and need to be served by a digital channel, but they're not saying get rid of the salespeople. They say they want more help, especially more accurate help, more specialized assistance on the really strategic kinds of key things. Channel partners fill an extraordinarily important role, and keeping them aligned and supported with the digital channel and giving them tools to grow their own digital channels are also super valid and important strategies. And I think the other thing that gives me great heart and encouragement for today's times is that there's a lot of ground that we've covered as an industry in the past 10 years. There are great leaders like Felinda, Sadaf, and Matt on this call, and companies with great case studies of success for how they have threaded this needle. It is an artful process. There is not going to be a one-size-fits-all digital or channel in any of your organizations. In fact, if you look at most manufacturers, our budgets are almost all put back out into the shop floor and driving supply chain, driving manufacturing every year. So we rarely have the budget and luxury of making mistakes here. So that artful thinking, focus on customer experience, on their success, on trust, and enabling all of your channel participants in the right way, whether that's self-service B2B or salespeople or channel partners, your digital investments can drive that.
Awesome. Andy, that really summarized it well. Thank you so much for participating. It is now time for the decision. Oh man, it's so dramatic. I love it. Okay, Andy, we got about 5 minutes left. I just wanted to summarize a couple things I took away. If you don't mind, sir, I'll start.
I'll probably have to go through this pretty quickly.
Yes, I know. Andy, I thought summarized things really quite nicely. First, I think there's three things that companies should take away from this. The first is, start with digitally enabling your channels. And look, those relationships exist. They're worthwhile. There's a reason 75% runs through them. They have a good understanding of your customers. One of our anonymous contributors here in the chat said, your channel partners have a better insights in your own customers than the manufacturers. Interesting. Number two, I think you have to embrace the evolution of your channels by examining your end customer and where they're buying. What are they doing with the product and how are they researching and buying products? And I think Amazon has to be a part of that strategy, and it should be through, in my opinion, a third-party selling approach, not selling wholesale to Amazon. And the third is, I think the channel conflict is greater in terms of fear than reality. I think the perception is greater. We saw this in B2C. I lived almost 20 years in B2C, Andy. By the time I finished in B2C, every manufacturer, like take footwear manufacturers, fashion apparel retailers, beauty companies, they're all selling direct to customer. Manufacturers, I'm making your argument here. I think eventually all manufacturers will sell. And I think we have a blended approach, as Andy said. So anyway, what did you take away?
Yeah, just quickly, we saw this in B2C and it's happening again in B2B. Initially there's that conflict and manufacturers, dip their toes in the water. The channel reacts negatively, threatens the manufacturers with suspending the relationships, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Nothing really happens. And eventually we end in this thesis, antithesis, synthesis space where everybody lives in harmony and you sell everywhere customers are, which is the answer here. It's where it's going things. But what's at dispute right now is how far you should go in selling direct. And I'm one that says step on the gas, especially now, do as much as you can. And as a brand, get in front of this and be your own advocate.
Okay. Well, I'm more of an advocate of crawl, walk, run into it, as I highlighted. All right. We got to go to our poll results. Do we have those available? Let's bring them up. The answer to our first question, as a brand manufacturer, should you sell direct if you're selling through channel? Wow. 78% say yes.
I wonder what that would have been 2 years ago. And I
Yeah.
bet today it's a necessity. It was maybe an escalating nice to have. Now it's an absolute must have.
All right, round two. What is our answer here? If you're a brand manufacturer, should you sell via Amazon? Yes. 67% people stay in front of their customers. I agree with that. And the approach is important. Andy, thoughts?
Yeah, I think if we added the word grudgingly, it would probably be
Oh, come on.
that might work. But look, there's some qualifiers here, but I just think you have to sell through Amazon. You just have to do as Sadaf and everybody else said, do so smartly.
Number one search engine in the United States, 70% almost starting their product search. Round three, should e-commerce team fund the digital infrastructure? And the answer is yes. No, actually, the answer is no. What am I saying? Wow, this is a close
It's in the margin of error, though.
Yeah,
so.
right. Wow.
That's what's fascinating is this, because I really didn't know how this was going to turn out. And I'm not surprised it was basically a 50-50 split, because it's one thing to say, hey, would you like to cure worst diseases? And the answer to that is, of course, yes. So that has. Would you like if we confiscated all of your money and your property to do so? Well, I don't know.
Maybe not.
So if you have to put real dollars behind this, it changes the equation.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining, everyone. Thank you to our panelists who have been outstanding today. What a great debate. Take care, and we'll see you next time.